What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Thanks for listening to the Whatcast. Mike, what's cracking, duder?
Just hanging out, being a kid.
Living life.
Yeah, playing with my Lincoln Logs and Pac-Man video games, just like the good Lord intended. I think that we're finally gonna do this.
Yeah, we're gonna cover something that we kind of used as a joke to hide our 300th episode.
And somebody was so pissed off about that. I don't remember who it was, but we got someone who was so angry about it that we, because we called the 300th episode Human Mutilation, and we had referenced it earlier in a previous show that we were going to do an episode on human mutilation. And that episode, I don't even think it had anything to do with human mutilation other than reptoids abducting us, right? I don't know. It was a while ago, but I don't recall us actually having human mutilation in that episode. So maybe his anger was warranted. If you're still listening, I'm glad you're still around, because here's the real deal, buddy.
There's a lot of people angry about the 300th episode, but moving right along. We've talked about...
it was awesome. I don't give a shit. I loved it.
We've talked about people finding mutilated human corpses before in some UFO cases, but something tells me that's not the route you're going to go too much this episode.
No, so when I talk human mutilation, when I say that, there's a lot of different ways you can take that, obviously. But I'm not talking about serial killers torturing people and leaving their bodies. I'm talking events that are very similar to cattle mutilations, where, and in some of these cases there's UFO sightings or weirdness involved, but some of them are literally just someone finds this corpse that's been mutilated in a way that like cattle mutilation would be done, where their bodies are completely drained of blood. There's no trace of anybody coming in or out from the area that the body was left. No scavengers have approached the body. Typically, the eyes are missing, the lips are missing, the tongue is missing, and usually the anal cavity and the genitals will be missing. And in some cases, there's other tissue. Like it almost looks like a tissue sample was taken. But all of the cuts are done surgically. They weren't like ripped off. So it was clearly something that was done intentionally and with precision. But again, there's no trace of anything coming in or out from these areas. Even in situations where there's snow or where there's mud or a field where they would tromp down plants, there's never any trace of anything coming or going. So that's what I mean by human mutilation. If you want to lump it in with aliens, we could go down that road. If you want to talk about other things and that it could be, we'll go down that road. But it's like the weird. If it had happened on a farm to a cow or a horse, you would consider it weird and anomalous. So I don't think the fact that it's a human necessarily takes away from the strangeness of the whole thing, because it's not just a dead body found. Typically when a dead body is found, if there's foul play involved, if there's if they were stabbed or shot or smothered or whatever, you can find that out in an autopsy. A lot of these, the person's drained of blood, but there's no sign of their veins and arteries collapsing, which would be indicative of a situation where the person bled to death. So you can rule that out, even though there's no blood in their body. Their veins have not collapsed, which in and of itself is pretty anomalous. But then you've got the fact that you've got these surgical cuts, and it's just, there's so much weirdness. I guess I'll start with one of the earlier ones, because this one, it starts off weird, and it just kind of ends with a human mutilation. But it's not just a case where someone was found randomly. This actually happened on the White Sands missile testing grounds, and that's that's something that seems to be an area where there's been a lot of UFO sightings in the past. But Air Force Sergeant Jonathan Lavette and Major William Cunningham were out on the testing grounds searching for scattered debris from a recent rocket test. And they had separated to cover more ground, but they were within earshot of each other. And all of a sudden, Major Cunningham said that he heard this loud scream. And in his mind, he was thinking that maybe Sergeant Lavette had been bitten by a rattlesnake. They were in the desert. It's a possibility. So he came running, thinking he was going to need medical assistance. And as he crosses the dune, he saw what he described as a silver disc that was hovering about 15 to 20 feet away from him. And from the bottom of this disc was what he described as a long serpentine arm that extended from the bottom of this thing and wrapped itself around Lavette's legs. And Major Cunningham froze in fear as he watched Lavette get pulled inside this craft. And as soon as he was pulled in, the craft rose vertically up into the sky and disappeared. So Major Cunningham runs back to his Jeep and he radios back to base for assistance. And the security team showed up and they took Cunningham's story, but based on his story, they thought that he was crazy. That's a fucking crazy story. Who would make that up, though? It doesn't make sense. But when they went back to base, they were able to confirm that there was an unidentified radar contact near the base at the exact time that Sergeant Lavette vanished. So they began searching the desert with no real explanation what had happened. They were combing the desert, and 3 days after his disappearance, Sergeant Lavette's body was found.
Ooh.
It was found 10 miles from the site that he was taken. And when they tested the tissue on his body, they said that they were able to determine that his body had been exposed to the elements for a day minimum, but no more than 2 days. So he had been gone for 3 days, but they said his body had only been exposed for a maximum of 2 days.
Okay.
So when they found him, though, his tongue had been cut from, just completely cut and removed from the lower portion of his jaw. His eyes were removed. His anus was removed, and all blood was drained from his body. And his genitals had also been removed. During the medical examination, after they had recovered his body, the coroner had remarked specifically that these were all done with surgical skill, and the anal cavity and the genitals had been removed and extracted like a plug, so like a perfect circle to take everything out, and then it was just pulled out.
Yikes.
And this was a case, his body was drained of blood, but there was no vascular collapse whatsoever. So they knew he had not bled to death.
Okay, so that's not what killed him.
No.
It was the anus.
But yeah, it was the anal coring. But I mean, this was a military event where this happened. And what do you make of the fucking, like, I've never heard of a serpentine arm coming from a craft. You know, like, was it really an arm, or was it like a mechanical tentacle thing? Like, was it a Doc Ock sort of situation?
Yeah, exactly. That's what my mind pictured.
And he was only 15 to 20 feet away from it.
That had to be terrifying.
Yeah. What are you gonna do though? I mean, you're just a dude. You're gonna fight a flying disc
with tentacles that grab your homies.
Yeah, he's lucky he didn't get anal cord.
Oh.
So that's like the first human mutilation case that's kind of, I guess, in the modern era. I'm sure if I went back to look at ancient cases, or maybe not even ancient, but older cases, there's probably some other ones that have different things attributed to it at the time. But all these cases I'm focusing on are from the modern era, and a lot of them have all the hallmarks of the cattle mutilations, like I mentioned. So with that being said, this case happened in 1956, but the first episode we ever did on this show took place in 1959, the Diatloaf Pass incident. And it's been a while since we've talked about this on the show. I mean, there's really not much more to add that hasn't already been talked about. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but basically the incident where there were 9 hikers that died in the Diatloaf Pass between the 1st and the 2nd of February 1959, under strange circumstances. And some of them had displayed this weird sort of physical trauma. A group of them actually did die from hypothermia, but there were 3 specifically that died from physical trauma. And even the ones that died of hypothermia still had this weird trauma. But 2 of the bodies were missing their eyes. One of them was missing its tongue. One was missing eyebrows. 2 of them had severe trauma to the chest, and the trauma, they said, it looked like it had been hit with the force of a car hitting them in the chest. And one of the victims had major damage to his skull. One of them had a small crack to the skull. But the investigation, at the conclusion, they didn't ever say, or they never, if they concluded what had killed them, they didn't release it. The official investigation said that a compelling natural force had caused their death. But what is a compelling natural force? Like, it's such a weird, vague term.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's like actual pictures of some of these bodies, and like there's one of them, when they found the body, it looked like the chest had caved in. The body was missing both eyes and the top lip, as well as the tongue. Like it looks like a zombie corpse, but it was a fresh corpse. And I believe we talked about this when we were when we covered it the first time. But there was a group of hikers that were also on the mountain, but they were like 2 or 3 miles away. But they reported seeing these glowing orange orbs in the sky that night before whatever it was that happened to the hikers happened. So I don't, is that linked, or is that a coincidence? But there were similar glowing orbs seen in the sky all through the month of February and even into March. And it was seen by independent witnesses that were hiking. They were seen by military representatives, and the meteorology service also had witnessed them.
Whoa. I didn't know it was that well documented. I remember talking about it when we covered Diatloaf, but damn.
Yeah. So were these UFOs looking for more victims after this? they got a taste for human blood, and they're like, oh, who else we coming for? I don't know. Like, it's the Diatloaf Pass incident is just such a weird case that really, you could tie it into so many different things. You could say they were attacked by a fucking Yeti.
Yeah.
You could say that they were blasted by the military, that they were shot by some weird alien weaponry. There's any number of things you could say, but I think the fact that there was missing body parts is it's a strange coincidence. But the fact that there weren't any genitals removed, which seems to typically be like one of the hallmarks of these sorts of cases, and I don't know why, but it's same with the cattle and horse mutilations. For some reason, the anal cavity is always cored out like a plug. It's, cut perfect circle and pulled out. And usually the reproductive organs are as well. So it's strange that these are also seen in these sort of cases. But there was a case that back when we did the military UFO shows, I talked about a few cases in Vietnam, but this case specifically I did not mention. But it kind of fits in here with what's going on, but it's slightly different. But this case took place in April 1972, and there was a group of special ops soldiers moving through the Cambodian jungle towards the Vietnamese border. They were looking for an enemy outpost and trying to intercept any enemy signals. But as they were coming through the jungle, they came upon this weird metallic, they didn't say it, they said it was a circular object that was made of a highly reflective material. So, like, in my head, I'm just picturing, like, heavily polished metallic, like mirror finish type of thing. But they said that it was so reflective that it worked just like a mirror, and it was reflecting the light and reflecting the jungle and all that. And it was just laying at on the floor of the clearing in the middle of the jungle. And the soldiers said that it was on like a tripod sort of landing gear thing, and that it was about 50 feet in diameter. And as they approached, they said they heard this humming noise that was emanating from the craft. And they saw a group of small humanoid figures moving around the outside of the object. And basically they looked like grays. They said they had large hairless heads and black eyes that kind of wrapped around their head. And what they were doing was taking these human body parts and naked corpses and bringing them into this big, with, I guess, like these big metallic boxes. And then once the boxes were filled, they would seal them up and then put them onto the craft. And they said, in watching them, the bodies that they were putting on were from both sides of the conflict. They said that they saw Vietnamese soldiers, they saw white American soldiers, they saw African American soldiers, and it just seemed to be like a mix of all the people that were involved in the fighting. And these beings were just loading the corpses and the body parts onto the craft.
What the fuck?
Knowing that, I mean, what are you going to fucking do in this situation? You're just a small group of special ops soldiers, like Dutch's men. Well, then again, if it was Dutch's men, they probably would have opened fire. Just fucking kept going until all their shit was exhausted. I just watched Predator with my youngest a couple weeks ago. He had never seen it.
What? Did he like it?
And yeah. Oh, he loved it. Yeah. And I forgot about this scene where one of the dudes just starts shooting into the forest, And then everybody just like without even questioning what's going on, everybody just starts shooting. And then fucking Carl Weathers' character, I can't remember his name, he comes running in late, but just immediately starts opening fire. Nobody has any idea what's going on. Just one guy starts shooting, and then everybody just exhausts all their ammo. It's fucking hilarious.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it is. But these guys aren't like that. So they were able to use their special ops training to sneak around. And once they were able to sneak around, then they opened fire. They waited so they could. Yeah. And they apparently got into a firefight, and then they radioed into camp to explain what had happened. Some of them had come back with... some of them had died in the firefight. Some of them came back without any injuries, but they were immediately flown to a military base in South Vietnam, and then they got interrogated after this event by these men in suits who didn't identify themselves. But they said they were basically threatened with their lives if they ever go public with this experience. And some of the men were allegedly subjected to hypnosis and had false memories implanted. So, I mean, that sort of thing makes me go back to the military abduction stuff that we had talked about previously, and that a lot of people that witness this sort of thing, there's a portion of the population who've experienced an abduction scenario, that will say that they, as part of their abduction, get brought to a human military base of some sort. A lot of time it's underground, but not every time. And that there's also aliens there. And they also describe like seeing human body parts or like human embryos floating in jars and, you know, all that creepy mad science type shit. So hearing this, where these soldiers got into a firefight with these beings, they call into the base to report what happened. Some of them die. They end up coming back, and before they can even be debriefed on the situation, they get flown to another military base where they're interrogated, not debriefed, but interrogated by men in suits and told if they talk about it, they're going to be killed. Makes me think that it's that sort of situation where maybe there was more to the conflict than just fighting communism. You know, maybe that's what wars are fought over now, to provide human remains to these beings. Like, what if that's the toll we're paying now?
Yikes. Yeah, that's like some Warhammer shit.
And like the more conflict we have, the more genetic samples these things have, and who fucking knows what this shit's even for, man. Like, why is it just horses and cattle and people? Why aren't we seeing other things? Like, why aren't there cats being mutilated in this manner? And maybe there is. Maybe I'm just ignorant to it. If you guys listening know of any cases of other animals being mutilated in weird ways, please let me know. I do remember hearing one case about deer that were found in the middle of the woods that had been mutilated in similar fashion, but only one case. But it was the same thing, you know, their lips were taken away, their tongue, their eyes, their anal cavity, their genitals. So, I don't know.
The old big eye special.
Yeah. But, I mean, these things go on, and there's a few cases from Brazil that are pretty disturbing. And I always forget if we covered that one, the case in Brazil where the UFOs were attacking people and like burning them and shit.
Yeah, we covered that.
And draining their blood. Yeah. So remember they were talking about how it would feel like a burn, but it would like drain their blood. They were like, I think they called them chupa chupas.
I think so.
Yeah. And so that kind of makes me wonder too, like if that's part of this, like maybe they're not actually, like maybe they're not sucking the blood. Maybe it's taking, extracting the blood rather than acting like a vampiric entity or something. It's actually some sort of device to extract blood from people. But there's a few cases in Brazil that are particularly disturbing. One happened in 1988 in the I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to give it a try. The Guaraparanga Reservoir in Brazil, there was a body found. I don't know if I pronounced it right. I did as good as I could. But they found this body, who it was at the time was an unidentified man, and the victim had been dead for 2 to 3 days, but there was no sign of decomposition on the body whatsoever. The eyes, the ears, the tongue, and the genitals had all been removed, as well as all of the digestive organs. But so he had been, when they found him, he had been badly mutilated, but again, it was 2 to 3 days, but there was no signs of decomposition, there was no rotting smell, and there were no scavengers that were trying to feed off of it. And there's actual pictures of the body that was found, and along with all these things missing from it, there was also these areas in the body where there was tissue taken, and they were taken in like this, it's almost like an oval shape, and it's just these holes in the body. That's a perfect, it wasn't torn, it wasn't like a stab wound, it wasn't like a bullet wound, it's actual, the tissue from that, like almost like it had been cored right out of the body. But it's in the arms, the legs, the neck, and I believe the chest. There were just these open holes.
How big are they in diameter?
Based on the pictures, I would say maybe 1.5 to 2 inches wide.
Wow, that's pretty big.
But yeah, it's just a clear hole. Like you can see into the all the tissue is removed from where that hole is. And again, he also had his lips removed. And when they had done the examination, in the examination, they were able to determine the holes were 1 to 1.5 inches in diameter. And through these holes, tissue and muscles were extracted. And the chest, there had been, like I said, the digestive organs were removed. And due to all the removal of the digestive organs, the chest had shrunk. So like it almost caved in. And they said it looked like whatever had caused the wounds just sucked everything right out through those holes. And they did test the holes just to confirm, and it was determined that they were not bullet holes. Yeah. And they were able to looking at the wounds, there was no evidence of bleeding, which they seem to think may have been, the wounds may have been used by some high heat and cauterizing the edge of the wound almost immediately.
It makes you think, what are they, maybe it's like food for them, or I don't know, maybe they're able to clone slave races from human debris.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
I mean, there's a lot of the show's called, Human Mutilations, but that's sample taking. That's something a little bit different, I think.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they took tissue right from this fucking thing, But there's another one in Brazil. This one is fairly recent. This one happened in 2009. And there was a 17-year-old girl who was found named Lisandra Benedict. And she was found with her eyes, her lips, and her tongue removed. And she also had these extraction holes in her body. There was one in her pelvis that was taken, and there was no blood around the body whatsoever. And they found her body just in the middle of nowhere. The closest thing was, it's a highway called BR 101. But it was basically the middle of nowhere is where they found her. And at first they blamed this dude he's a 37-year-old guy who was alleged to have been having a relationship with her. But there was absolutely no evidence that was linking him to this, and he was let go. This one doesn't have anything weird about it, other than the fact that it has all of the markings of a mutilation case. No lips, no eyes, no tongue, and these weird extraction holes with no blood.
Now, were all the parts that were missing done with the same surgical precision?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know. I just add this one because it's another one from Brazil, and it seems kind of strange. There's another one where this one, I don't know what to make of this one. This has also happened in Brazil, but this one's a little bit different. This happened in 2019, and there's this 36-year-old guy. He just goes by his initials because he was a professor at a college, and I'm not sure which college, but he was a professor of agroecology, and he was also a very strong proponent of the LGBT rights, and was a big member of the community and everything. But he went missing on the night of June 27th, 2019. And his neighbors say that they saw two men leave his house and then drive off in his car, but he was not with them on that night. And the next day, the police got called to his house, and it's not clear who called them to his house, but his house had been completely trashed. Things were thrown around and broken, and there were bloodstains on the floor. On the morning of June 29th, they found his body, and the explanation that was given was that he was shot. But if you look at the pictures of his body, he has no lips, no eyes, and an extraction hole in his armpit.
So it seems like they don't want to link that to any of the other cases. They're actively...
Yeah, and I think what they're doing is linking him being like a liberal college professor who's supporting gay and trans rights, that he is, I think they're trying to use, basically say it without saying it, that because of that he was probably murdered. It's just weird because there's pictures of his body, and it's fucking horrific. He has no eyes, no lips, and an extraction hole in his armpit. And they said he was shot, and that's how he died.
Not to be too gruesome, what's the state of decomposition in this photo?
Nil.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want the link to this story, I don't want to put it in the show notes because it's got dead bodies in it, and I don't want to get sued by fucking one of the Reagans or something like that.
Yeah, and one of the bodies is that there's pictures of that 17-year-old girl dead. So
oh no,
it's pretty. I don't want to put it out there because it is when I first saw it, I was fucking pretty taken aback by it, and I don't like seeing that type of shit. Like I love horror movies, but real life gore really gets to me. So it's not something that I want to really just throw it and be like, but if you're really interested, hit me up on Twitter or whatever. That's really the only thing you can find me on. Or if you're a patron, ask me on Discord and I'll send you a link. But yeah. The one thing about this that I did find was when I was looking for these cases was there is a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but I did come across a couple cases where the researcher said that they didn't have any further information, but they were just sent this series of photos. And in at least one case, it's very clearly photoshopped, which is too bad. But those are the cases where there's, no further information.
Right.
So I think we can discount that, but that's why I'm not even bringing that one up. It doesn't matter. It's a phony baloney case. But there was one other case I wanted to talk about. This happened in the 90s in the UK. There were, over the period of a few weeks, there were 7 bodies found in the same field in Dalby Forest in North Yorks.
Whoa.
Yeah. And these all had the marks of this sort of thing going on. They had no tongues, no eyes. They were all bloodless. And in this case, it's even a step further. They were hairless when they were found.
What?
Yeah. And at the time it was going on, when the story started to come out in the press, there was a cover story that was created saying that there were mannequins being placed in the field, and these weren't actual dead bodies. They were just mannequins.
So somebody tried to actively cover it up.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. And I guess a lot of these, the bodies were never able to be identified by the families. Like the bodies were never, they were recovered and taken away. There was one witness who said in 97 there was one body that was found in this field, and what he said was an official looking car that had a blue light on the inside of the windshield, and a hearse took the body away, and there was not a single word said about it. And the researcher Tony Dodd, are you familiar with him at all?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he did some research on this, and he had a friend who was the undertaker that was involved in some of these retrievals, and he tried to get information out of him, and he flatly refused to talk about it. And when pressed for why he wouldn't talk about it, he said that it was due to the Official Secrets Act. And he did say one thing. He said there have been more than 7 retrievals, and he said 7 isn't even the tip of the iceberg.
Whoa. Now, for somebody to actively try to cover that up, I mean, it looks like they gave it one shot, and then other people reported that it was actually bodies, and they gave up. That's strange.
Yeah. There were a few other cases that happened in the UK in the 90s. There was one that involved an 8-year-old girl in Staffordshire. She was found bloodless, eyeless, lipless. Then there was another case that had 2 people that were found in a car, or next to a car, I guess. This happened in Taliban Mountain, and it was August 1990. There was an SUV that was found on the side of the road with the engine running, and the engine was running, but the seats were missing from the car.
Like completely?
2 weeks later, the seats were gone. 2 weeks later, the owners of the car, a man and a woman, were found 3 kilometers from where the car was left. And they were laid out side by side right next to each other. They had no blood, no genitals, no teeth, no ears, no lips, and no eyes. The man had all of his skin removed. He was completely skinless.
Oh.
And the woman had her breasts removed.
Holy shit, dude. And again, predation was ruled out?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, I mean, it was the owners of the vehicle that was left running. And again, the car, the seats were missing from this vehicle.
Yeah, and if it's a matter of trying to remove evidence, I mean, they would have took the keys to, I don't know. That's crazy. That's terrible. I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
That's a little bit much for like some random psycho killer.
There were a couple of researchers that were looking into this, and with a lot of this stuff, it's hard to know really what you can believe, but these guys they go by the name. Their names actually are Richard Hall and Derek Go, and they have met with a former military member. The only thing he says he was in the Army, but he won't give his name or anything. So this man, and I've got to assume that they were able to verify his credentials, but with a lot of stuff in this field, you really never know. Some people just will jump on a story because it's a good story and then, buy into it. But I don't want to presume anything. I'm going to just put it out there. But these guys claim to have this Army guy, who they call Mr. X, who claims that he was part of a U.S.-led team that was from NATO, or worked through NATO, that was called Group 58 Security. And their job was to search for evidence and seal off any areas where UFO activity had been monitored. And by search for evidence, I mean evidence of human mutilation, and then seal off the area. But he said incidents like this happen all over the world, and he personally had witnessed between 30 and 40 mutilated human beings over the course of his time within that unit. But he said basically what they do is they recover the bodies. Anything, if the bodies match all the marks, like where the surgical precision, lack of blood, all that, they recover the bodies. They seal off the area, and then once they seal off the area, a team of U.S. scientists come into the area and remove all of the material for analysis. And any of the bodies that were recovered would remain on missing persons list, and details would not be provided to any of local law enforcement. They would take the bodies away, and that would be it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really know what to make of that. This guy says that he once saw personally a landed craft, and inside the craft there were a bunch of human body parts. He said that he's known people that have worked in this unit that have suffered radiation injuries from being, I guess, arriving on the scene too early or being too close to a craft that might be present.
Right.
But he said a lot of times when these bodies are found, there's also going to be burn marks on the ground. And sometimes even the plants and the trees will get twisted, like from the heat, I guess. Probably like the moisture evaporating from the heat, and it causes them to all twist. I don't know. But, it's if such a thing, if these human mutilation things are real, and this is a real thing, and the government's aware of it, and we're aware of what's going on, I think it would make sense that there would be a team to clean it up and block the thing off.
Right. No kidding.
But in the other hand, it could really tie in with this military abduction stuff, though. And maybe it's just like these guys think that they're doing one thing, but they're really just covering up some nefarious experiments that the government is doing. Like, what if all this shit is people, man? What if it's all people that's doing this? It's not fucking aliens, and it's just people doing some weird fucking experiments, and I don't know, man. Either way, whether it's people or aliens, it's creepy as shit, and it scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, me too, dude. That's some of these, like the article you sent to me. I mean, we've seen some pictures from some of these cases before, and of course some were new to us, but to actually see the condition of these bodies, it really like hits it home with how strange it is. It's totally not normal. Like you said, they're clearly not like normal homicide victims. Everything's done with surgical precision, so there's no predation involved. It's just one of these things that doesn't make sense, and there's no real, like, just obvious cause. I mean, these people are being treated just like the cattle when it comes to cattle mutilations. And again, I just wonder what, I mean, they're sample collecting, they're harvesting in some cases. That's super scary.
Yeah, it is. It's terrifying. Like, imagine if, have you seen Nope yet?
No, I haven't.
Do you know what I'm talking? Like, do you know the movie I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Well, fuck. If you haven't seen it, I don't really want to talk about it then. But it's scary as hell, and it kind of there's a part of it that is just so fucking scary that reminds me of this sort of thing.
Nice.
Yeah. Highly recommend it. It's a very cool alien movie or UFO movie. Maybe it's neither. You kind of got to see it I don't want to spoil it, but it's fucking awesome. Highly recommend it. But I don't know, man. This shit scares the hell out of me. And like, what if this is tied into the missing 411 stuff? It's just they disappear, and the reason people don't see them again is because they're covered up, and that's why the rangers don't keep track of it, and there's no national database for people that go missing in national parks. It's just easy pickings.
Right, these mutilation cases where the bodies are recovered are the end result, and the people going missing in the parks, that's like the step A. We're seeing the actual taking of the people in those cases, possibly. I'm not saying that's the case.
Yeah, it's maybe that's how they take full bodies.
Right.
They just lure them into the woods, and then the whole body, and then like, we don't need to extract anything. We've got a full body right here. And then that's why a lot of people are just never seen again. And there's no trace because they just get fucking alien tentacle armed and sucked into a spacecraft. Or maybe not a spacecraft, but some sort of fucking craft.
Who's to say there's any bodies in any graveyard in the world?
Oh, God. How deep are we going to go on this thing now? Wow.
All the morgues are just paid to shuffle them off into a truck where the government trades it with aliens for.
Yeah. Oh, God. That's horrifying. And when they take them in, they're not even really embalming them. And that's why people look so, perfect, I guess, when they're dead, because they're actually wax figures.
Oh, replacements.
They're all wax figures. Yep. And meanwhile, your loved ones are being harvested. Oh, that's awful. I hate it so much. God damn it. Why did you put that in my head?
Yeah, out of all the alien scenarios that have been thought of and even portrayed in movies, I mean, as old as the Twilight Zone, us being their food, it's always been a scary thing. But I mean, just imagine if all the shit goes down and our government or the world power can't just negotiate with them anymore. The aliens are not having it, and they're just going to attack. And they have to announce, like, they're not taking any prisoners. Like, they want your dead body. There's no reason to keep anybody alive.
Yeah. We're all doomed. We're all going to be harvested. That's the way it goes. Anytime you have children your children are going to be harvested. It's just the way it goes.
It's what they used to fuel their ships. They just wanted to grind up your family.
Gross.
We're
just fuel.
Yeah. Can you imagine if it's like they don't even need us for like genetic materials or anything like that or cloning? They're just like, oh, no.
No, we use your anal core like a flux capacitor. Our ships run on your ass. Literally.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.